Hey everybody, it's GauntletX, and Modern Horizons 3 has just launched on Magic Arena, so today I'm going to be playing my very first sealed event of the brand new format. We're going to be busting open 6 packs of the new set and building the best deck we can out of those cards, so let's hope for some sweet rares and some fun stuff, but without further ado, let's see what we get to play with today. Alright, and this is a pretty lucky combination of rares here, so we've got a good chunk of rares. This is going to happen quite frequently with the new play boosters. Instead of 1 rare per pack, you can open 2 or 3 sometimes, so 9 rares in the sealed pool is pretty sweet, but what's even sweeter is every single one of these rares is in 3 colors only. So red, green, and black. In Jund, we can play all of our rares. Not that all of these are cards we're going to want to play in the same deck, but there are several really powerful options here. We've got this gigantic flyer with Gengar. We've got the big Eldrazi finishers with Ulamog the Defiler, and the Haragast is a fun little in-between where you can emerge it out by sacking another creature to play this for super cheap. And it's also going to help you emerge out your other gigantic creatures like Ulamog, so that'd be a fun little combo there. We've got Disa, who can spit out a bunch of Tarmogoyf tokens. We've got the Thief of Existence, which is just very sturdy for its mana cost. And then we have some of our weaker, more specific cards, like Crick, Son of Yawgmoth wants to be in a very, very close to mono-black deck, so probably won't be the best here when we're playing red, green, black. The Cursed Mirror is pretty medium. I don't love 3-mana mana rocks. I think they're quite mediocre, but the big upside of this is that it makes sure that it isn't a completely dead draw in the late game. If you top deck this when you don't need any more mana, when it would be just flooding out, you can at least get one big swing out of it, have it be the biggest creature on the board for one swing, so that's pretty nice. Wooded Foothills is definitely good, because it is just going to be fixing our mana for our Jund deck. And then Aether Revolt is one of these cards that is super difficult to evaluate. Obviously, if you're in an energy-heavy deck, that is the most consistent way to use this, since you can keep producing energy and make sure that you're just pinging things off with that secondary ability. But the first one is pretty hard to figure out how good it's going to be. I guess if we have a lot of fetch lands like the Wooded Foothills, there are common fetch lands in the format that bring out a land into play tapped. If we have some of those, then that's another way to get the Revolt trigger going so that we can add to our non-combat damage, but still it's only adding to specifically non-combat damage, so probably only good in a very energy-heavy deck, probably one of the weakest rares. Doesn't really go with our just big Jund beats that we have over on this side of the rare pile. So we know what direction we want to be in, but we shouldn't completely put the blinders on. We'll take a peek at our white and our blue, but they're going to have to be really good to get us into that other direction here. So I do like to start off with a look at our colorless and our multicolored cards. These can show us where our mana fixing lies, and some of the multicolor signpost commons and uncommons can be nearly as strong as some rares, so they can be other reasons to lean in a certain direction. So starting off with the colorless, Junk Diver is not a card that I think is going to go particularly well into decks outside of very, very specifically very, very artifact synergistic piles, and even then, I think there's just better graveyard recursion in the formats. Breaker of Creation, though, is an excellent card for an Eldrazi ramp deck, which is already kind of what we want to do when we've got an Ulamog in the sealed pool. Outside of that, we just have the Wastescape Battle Mage. Is this good if we're not playing blue? So it's a 2-mana 2/2, but we have to have access to colorless mana to cast it, so a little difficult to cast without a bunch of landscapes. Luckily, we have a bunch of those. But if we kick it for a green, we get to exile an artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. That's probably main deckable, not particularly exciting, but main deckable. If we're playing it with blue as well, we can also bounce something off of the kick. I think if you have access to both green and blue mana, this is pretty good. If you have access to just green, it's kind of mediocre, and if you have access to just blue, then it's like on the better end of mediocre. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. We've got 2 copies of it as well, so if we have really consistent colorless mana, we'll probably play around with those. Null Elemental Blast feels like the kind of card that you're going to want out of the sideboard in best of 3 games, and we are playing a best of 1 sealed event here, so I'm not going to toy around with it too much. For our mana fixing, we're looking great. We have Wooded Foothills here. We have Foreboding Landscape for green-black fixing. We have 2 Bountiful Landscapes for green-red fixing. Urza's Cave isn't really fixing, but it is another way to get colorless mana if we have a ton of cards like the Wastescape Battle Mage that want us to have specifically colorless. And then, of course, later in the game, we can go ahead and crack this and turn it into whatever land we need, but it's tremendously slow if you're just using it for that as mana fixing. We've also got Shattered Landscape for more red-black fixing and 2 Twisted Landscapes for perfect fixing between red, black, and green. So our mana fixing is really, really set up in this sealed pool to go for the Jund deck with Disa in there, with the Ulamog at the top of the curve, just throwing in all of our best rares. So that feels like a really excellent spot to be. But taking a peek at our other multicolored stuff, 2 Snapping Voidcraws could be decent to keep in mind towards ramping into Giant Eldrazi like Ulamog. Watchdog's just a fine card for a modified deck, a deck that wants a lot of cards with counters or auras or equipment on them. Shadow Spinner, a fine role filler for blue-black decks. It's good in like Reanimator. Titan's Vanguard, excellent card towards Jund that we're working on right now. And it does really feel like a lot of the multicolored cards are super synergy-driven cards, like Gargoyle being great in an energy deck, Sneaky Snacker being great in a draw 3 deck, but none of these being super great reasons to head in that direction. So still really happy to have my mind set on Jund for now, but let's check out our individual colors. Nice easy way to do that is to just click on the color here when you've got your sealed deck in the bottom, and that's going to drag down every monocolored card in that specific color. So as we can see, there are just not a lot of white cards here. So very low quantity of cards, plus there's nothing super premium. There are 0 removal spells. Probably the best of these cards are just like Rose-Caught Knights for 2 for 1 value, or maybe Mandibular Kite's better than it looks. Just a quick little aggressive flyer that can give you value later, giving anything flying. Like, it's a bunch of fine stuff. Not a bunch, it's a little bit of fine stuff, but the quantity is not there, and there's just no removal either, so not a super exciting color. And on to blue, once again, looks like very low on cards in this color as well. We do have one of the spell lands, which is pretty sweet. I like these cards quite a bit, where they can work as a spell or a land to help you mana flood less often and mana screw less often. Depth Defiler is also a pretty premium uncommon, just as a 5 mana 3/5, giving you whichever one of those abilities that you want. Like, that's already really good, and if you do have access to colorless mana specifically in your deck, being able to cast this for 6 mana and do both is super sweet. That's a very cool card, but again, I don't see anything incredible here. At least there is one removal spell this time with the Utter Insignificance. Some nice little tempo flyers, these Electrozoas. Try to speed out real quick. But overall, not a super exciting color. Checking out the black now. We've obviously got Gengar, which we will certainly be playing in our 3-color deck if we get to go that way. These Gargantuas are also excellent. Just big creatures that draw you extra cards in the late game. There's some other ways to potentially put +1/+1 counters on them, and with any of those other ways, the card becomes very absurd. So if we use our early game Wither and Bloom as removal, and then we have this sitting in our graveyard, then later in the game, for just 2 mana, we can put another +1/+1 counter on one of our Gargantuas and draw another 2 cards off of it, which is absolutely absurd. So I certainly love having the Wither and Bloom alongside the Gargantua. I don't think our other removal spell, our Consuming Corruption here, is going to get played in our deck. Since it's going to be a 3-color deck, it'll be hard to have a lot of swamps on board, but that can be really good in a 2-color deck that's a little heavier towards black than the secondary color. We've got to Fell the Propane, though, which is certainly nice. Being able to have the land or removal spell off of this card just makes it super flexible, and the removal spell half is perfectly efficient as well. So, very happy with that. Black looks real good. Couple very good removal spells. We've got the really good top end here. We just don't have a lot of early game plays that are going to help buy us time and get towards our big late game spells, so we certainly want some of that out of our red or our green, but we have 2 other colors to look through to help find those cards. And red looks like it's got some early game here. We've got cheap removal with both Fanged Flames and Galvanic Discharge. Those can both help us stay alive. We've got the Gatekeeper here as an early game creature that can unearth again later for more damage. We've got a Charge Bug for just a little 1/3 blocker early. This is much better on the aggressive, of course, getting those menacing damage swings in, but we don't have enough other cheap creatures to really do that much with the menace swings, so it's mostly going to be a blocker for this deck. Sarpadian Simulacrum, just a little 1/1 that turns into removal later, also fine. Little bit of energy synergies here with Aether Revolt and Phyrexian Ironworks, but I don't think there's enough to get either of these to really function here. There is a Thriving Skyclaw that can single-handedly give us enough energy to trigger the Ironworks one time to get a golem out of it, but I think you want to be pretty dedicated to energy for the Phyrexian Ironworks to be that consistent, because if you're playing it just to get 1/3/3 every 3 turns, that is very, very slow. Captor seems kind of whatever. Spawn Gang Commander does seem very good. You get 3 Eldrazi spawn when you play it, which you can then use for 3 different ways to shoot anything for 2 damage, but you can also just hold on to those spawn to get a 3 mana burst towards casting your 10-drop Ulamog or something like that later, which is certainly something we're interested in this sealed pool. So I think Commander is really nice and really flexible, where again, it's going to be 3 different ping spells, or it's going to be 3 different pieces of ramp. Ember Mage, super fine as well. Removal spell on a stick kind of creature. So, yeah, big fan of the red. That looks great as well. And what about the green? Last but not least, hopefully. The curve is certainly pretty awkward here. We've got a Symbiote, which does literally nothing. Hydra's just a really late game play. We do have enough colorless sources that the Wumpus Aberration's just gonna be a 4 mana 6/6. As long as you spent colorless mana specifically on this, you just mitigate its entire downside. You don't have to deal with that at all. We've got the Eldrazi Repurposer here. That's a little bit of ramp towards the big stuff. The Evolution Witness is another card that synergizes really well with our black removal spell that puts a +1/+1 on a creature later. So that's a nice little piece of synergy there, while just being a good card by itself. Thief of Existence, just a beefy Eldrazi for the cost. The Trickster's Elk is pretty flexible, shutting off one of our opponent's bigger creatures, or, I mean, it can turn like an Eldrazi spawn into a 3/3, or we can just cast it as a 3 mana 3/3 as well. A little more removal here with Horrific Assault. And that looks like about it. But it certainly looks fine. And we get all of our rares here in this 3-color pair, alongside just some of our strongest commons and uncommons as well. So I think this is the direction we want to be heading in. Let's see. Okay, so this is all of our mono-colored red, green, black spells and all of our multicolored green, red, black spells. Get Crick out of here. We're not deep enough into black for that. So let's get Consuming Corruption out of here. We're not deep enough into black for that. I'm going to go ahead and stop doing it the fancy way and just start doing it the traditional way now, because there's a lot of cards that aren't in here that I saw that we definitely want to put in here. Specifically the mana base. Like, it didn't put this land in because it's not specifically red, green, and black, but it only needs to be on color for 2 of our colors for us to be interested in it. This is still fixing our red and black mana and tapping for colorless for all our Eldrazi nonsense. We're still going to play that. Same with this one for green, red. Blue, red, white. That is literally only on color for red. So probably not that one, just because we have so many landscapes that we've already got enough without that. And same for like not playing Urza's Cave here. I could see in a pinch in a deck that had a lot of cards that wanted colorless mana and just didn't have a lot of landscapes. I could see in a pinch playing an Urza's Cave or just a landscape that's on color to only one of our colors, just as a colorless source that we can turn into, you know, red if we need that instead. But this deck has so many landscapes in the sealed pool, we really don't need that. I think that's just going to make the mana base a little worse to toy around with those. And I do think I want to play Breaker of Creation most likely. And we definitely want to play the Haragast and the Ulamog. The Battle Mage is a little more questionable. It's only going to be main deckable artifact and enchantment removal, and that's about it. Otherwise, it's just a hard to cast 2/2. There are a lot of artifacts and enchantments in this format, though, There are artifact creatures and enchantment creatures. There are auras, there are equipments. We might try out like one copy, see how it ends up playing out. It is day one of the format. I did play through the early access event, but I'm still not 100% convinced on always wanting main deck artifact enchantment removal, unless they're like pretty flexible, where they're like pretty good even when you're not using them as artifact and enchantment removal. And the battle mage is just not good, really, unless you're using it as artifact and enchantment removal. Otherwise, it's just a hard to cast 2-mana 2/2. If we were playing blue, this would be a slam dunk, but I don't think we're splashing in blue just for this card's kicker. Anyways, we are on 61 cards right now, so we need to cut 21 more cards out of here. Let's start with the Wirewood Symbiote. I mean, I don't think we have a single elf. Well, we do. We have one single elf, but still, just untapping our single 3-mana 2/1 is not exciting. I think we have really excellent top end, like really excellent ways to end the game between Double Breaker of Creation, Haragast, and Ulamog. So some of our more mediocre, kind of common ways to end the game can get cut here. Like, let's see. I mean, Aether Revolt for sure, but anything else at 5 or more mana that is just less good. Nyxborn Hydra, probably, that's basically only going to be used as a big way to dump a bunch of mana into trying to end the game. Fangs of Colonia, very similar, 6 mana. We're trying to buff the entire board, get a big swing in. Not really something we're doing with this deck. We're just going to cast one of these big things. Maybe the Ember Mage can get cut, but it's also like flexible removal. But we do have a lot of removal already. We have Fell the Propane, Fanged Flames, Galvanic Discharge. Wither and Bloom. I guess not like a lot, but still a good amount. And I think we can probably drop this 6-drop. Anything at 5 mana we can cut? Because I still feel a little loaded up here at the high mana values. And I don't want to drop the Gargantuas because they work so well with the Wither and Bloom, but it's only one copy of Wither and Bloom anyway. And I do think this is weaker than our other 5 mana cards. Maybe this isn't the greatest Titans Vanguard deck, because we don't have that much Eldrazi spawn production. I mean, it puts a counter on itself when it attacks, right? It does. So it attacks as a 6/6 trample the first time. It will put a counter on the Spawn Gang and everything that makes. It'll put a counter on Aberration, Thief of Existence, Repurposer. Not the Gatekeeper, not the Charge Bug. I mean, it is an inherently powerful card, but we're a little low on Eldrazi spawn for it. I think the other 5-drops are all just a little bit better in this deck, and I don't want to overload at those mana costs. I definitely want to cut Phyrexian Ironworks. We are just not doing energy things here. Probably want to cut Eviscerator's Insight. We only have a few ways to make like an Eldrazi spawn to sack. Not a ton. Glimpse the Impossible is not a card I really want to run. When I have a bunch of really high mana value cards, because then it's just really likely that we're permanently exiling whatever we're flipping instead of casting in the same turn. Like, I guess you can theoretically use this just to get like 3 spawn and try to ramp something out early, but then you're permanently exiling 3 things out of your deck to do it. I'm not the most interested in it. Inventor's Axe, again, seems like a decent kind of energy sort of card. Not really good here. Quest for the Necropolis. Probably pretty good here, because we have a lot of big top-end creatures, so if they're dealt with without getting exiled, being able to flip one back on the board's pretty good. And obviously we can do that for very cheap if we cast this early in the game and get a bunch of landfall triggers out of it. And our deck can get a lot of landfall triggers. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fetch lands. Every single one of those can get 2 landfall triggers off of that one card. So this actually does seem real nice. Probably just run all of the hard removal and not the combat tricky stuff like Gift of the Viper. Although this could be pretty absurd in the right deck. because it's a combat trick that's going to give you a surprise blocker. Your opponent can attack into your board while you're all tapped out. You just have like one forest untapped, and then boom, you untap your blocker to eat their thing while putting a +1/+1 counter on it to potentially trigger cards like Evolution Witness and Fetid Gargantua. So again, seems like it could be really good in the right draft deck, but we only have 3 cards that are triggering when we put a +1/+1 counter on them. So not like super excellent here. I guess we have 4, but the Dream Drinker Vampire's trigger does not matter on blocks. It's just a menace thing. So not really interested in that. Thriving Skyclaw is just another kind of energy synergy sort of card. Captor, it's for like a really aggressive deck. We're certainly more defensive, ramping into big things, or just trying to prolong the game till we get to big things. Still don't know how I feel about this Trickster's Elk thing. We don't have a lot of good cards to put it on our own board, and just a 3-mana 3/3 is pretty bad. So unless our opponent has a lot of cards that are better than just a 3/3, it's not going to be particularly exciting, and even then, it's like a less than a 1-for-1 removal spell, right? If they play their gigantic Ulamog, and then we just fell the propane it, we're spending 1 card and 2 permanents to kill it, but if we like Trickster's Elk it, it's still doing something on the board, even if it's significantly weaker. Well, I guess Ulamog's a bad example, because it would still have a million +1/+1 counters, even if we Trickster's Elked it. A very clear, very simple example would be our opponent plays a 4-mana 6/6. On turn 4, we can blow it up, and then it's gone forever. We traded 1 card for their 1 card, or we can Trickster's Elk it, now it's a 3/3. The 3/3 still matters. Worst case scenario, that 3/3 helps them like double block to kill our 5/5 or something like that, in which case they're still not like getting a 1-for-1 trade. We're spending an entire card. Well, Trickster's Elk makes that even harder to guess. Hold up. So normally with these kind of cards, where you are reducing the opponent's card, it's not good because you're not getting a full 1-for-1 trade of value. You're not spending your card to completely delete their card, you're just making theirs a little weaker, but you've still spent your entire card. With Trickster's Elk, it's an even harder evaluation because you're not technically spending your entire card, because if that 3/3 ends up dying, then you get a 3/3 back on your board. So actually, it is still kind of like a 1-for-1. I just still don't think it's going to be that good in a deck that's like super heavy on, well, not super heavy, but decently set up removal wise. I don't know. I'm not playing around with it here. It's probably really good in like green white, where you really care about auras and stuff. I don't love these battle mages. I think I'm gonna ditch those. Grim Drinker's kind of whatever. You know, I'm just gonna go big here. Let's save the Mana Rock, Cursed Mirror in. Let's get rid of the little combat trick, the little creature. And let's just have a real high curve and hope that the sealed format's a bit slower here. Maybe even get rid of like the charge bug, because that's basically strictly an aggro card. At least the Simulacrum does trade off as removal later in the game. All in on big, dumb idiots, basically. I'm gonna go like 1 Gargantua. 1 Vanguard? Sure. Really high mana values, really high curve, just big dumb idiots the deck. We've got a Victimize in here if we can leave a Eldrazi spawn behind. We've got 1, 2 Eldrazi spawn producers. Well, hold on. That's probably a little rough for Victimize. Definitely a little rough for Titan's Vanguard. But we have other colorless creatures for Titan's Vanguard, at least. We don't have a ton of expendable stuff for the Victimize because we're going pretty high on the curve, but we've got like a card that can unearth. Got this card, kind of expendable to sack that. I mean, I guess I can just play the 1 Quest for the Necropolis as our graveyard recursion, then we don't have to sacrifice something to try to reanimate some big stuff in the late game. Yeah, I'm going to ditch the Victimize, but I'll keep the Titan's Vanguard. We do need to put 1 more card back in. really high mana curve, we could play an 18th land because this Fell the Propane, it's one of these modal double-faced land cards, but we want to cast the spell more often than we want to use the land, so I don't like treating this as a land towards my land count. So I could see just running 18 natural lands plus this. There's also the concern of when we have 7 different fetch lands, if we crack these in the early game, every time we crack one of these, we reduce the odds of top decking another land a tiny bit, which normally doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to worry about being a deck that has 3 Evolving Wilds and 14 basics and being like, oh no, I'm not going to draw lands as much as I would in a regular 17 land deck. But when you have 7 Evolving Wilds, when literally like almost half your lands are fetches, it gets a little concerning. So yeah, I think we can play an 18th land. I mean, we have a bunch of 8s and a 10. We've got high mana values here. So what land do we want? Because we need to make sure the mana base is good here. We've got 7 green, 8 red, and 6 black cards. Is that the truth? Let's just sort here and eyeball it. Just do it the boomer way. I don't trust analytics. Yeah, that's very even on all the colors, and they're all pretty equivalently important. Black has multiple double black spells. I guess green actually looks the least important here because green isn't giving us any mana fixing, and green does not have any cards that require 2 green mana. But we have a card that needs double red, we have a card that needs double black. All of our early removal spells that we want to stop aggressive decks are red or black. So we need to have access to a red or black source early to try to stay alive in those kind of games. Whereas with green, our early removal is Horrific Assault, which doesn't do anything until we've already played creatures anyway, so it's more of a late game removal spell, even if it does only cost 1. So I think red and black we want a good chunk of, and then green we just want like 1 less source than our red and black. And that's how we'll do the mana base. Makes sense to me. So, let's check out red and black first, and make sure those are nice and well positioned. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ways to get a red source. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, actually 6, 7, 8 ways to get a black source. So 9, 8, and then green, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm going to swap a forest for a swamp, so I'm on 9, 9, 8. 9 ways to get red, 9 ways to get black, and 8 ways to get green. And that seems pretty good to me. Feels quite consistent mana-wise. And of course, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 natural colorless sources to try to hit the double colorless we need for Breaker of Creation. So we don't want to always immediately crack those fetches, and we need to keep that in mind because we don't have enough Eldrazi spawn to consistently cast this off of spawn tokens. We need to make sure to leave 1 or 2 of the fetch lands around when we've got our colors already. We'll keep that in mind in gameplay, but I think this mana base looks good and this deck looks powerful. We are going to call it a deck here. Alright, actually, we didn't put the 18th land in yet, so we could just go a completely even split on all 3 colors and put the 18th in, but I could also put another black source in towards hitting both of these double black costs, or another red source in just because we have more red spells. I'm just going to go for actually the full even in the end. We'll put another green source in as the 18th land, but now, with that beautiful mana base, we'll call it a deck here. Alright, here's a look at our final deck list for today, and we are on a Jund Bomb pile. We are just trying to survive until we get to 5+ mana, and we're just going to slam down a bunch of incredibly powerful rares from there. We've got Gengar, Sire of Famine, just a gigantic flyer. that can turn our creatures into blood tokens by sacking them. We've got Disa that can spit out a bunch of Tarmogoyfs. We've got an Ulamog that can completely end the game, as well as an Aragast that can get emerged and make it so we can even emerge out our other very expensive creatures by sacrificing other creatures we have on board. And we even have some good, just uncommon kind of bombs like the Breaker of Creation as a super big Eldrazi to end the game with at the top end as well. So really explosive top end stuff. The big issue here is we didn't have a ton of good cheap stuff, so I ended up cutting most of it. So we have very little when it comes to board presence in the early game. We have one 1-drop creature that's just a 1/1 until later, then it turns into a removal spell, and nothing at 2 mana. But we do have a nice little chunk of 3 drops to start blocking at that point and help buy some time towards higher mana values. And we have some good cheap removal spells to try to not die to super aggressive decks. We've got a Wither and Bloom, a Fanged Flames, and a Galvanic Discharge. Should be tremendously helpful if we have any one of these 3 in our opening hand. So hopefully those can go a long way. But that is a look at today's deck list. I'm pretty excited for it. We're going to be slamming down some big rares and seeing how explosive things can get. But without further ado, let's head into the gameplay and see how it does. All right, here we are on the play for game 1. I will keep this. The mana isn't perfect. We've only got 2 of our colors, but I do like getting this quest to be basically just 1 mana to reanimate something later, because we're immediately just going to landfall twice on turn 2. Plus, we do have the 1 mana removal for the discharge, and if we really miss on lands here, then we can use this Fel the Propane as the land for turn on turn 3, cast Cursed Mirror off of shooting ourselves in the face. Prefer not to do that, but we might have to. Okay, we do not have to. There's a Foreboding Landscape we can use towards green, but for now, let's get the Cursed Mirror. Not getting any creature copies off of it, but making sure that we ramp up. We don't get our 1 big hasty swing. But that's just like a backup plan for if you top deck it late, mostly. Little 3/1 Void Pouncer from our opponent. Could just discharge that. I don't hate it with a Fel the Profane in hand, and we're against... Oh no, I said the correct name. We're against a red-green deck, so they're probably playing mostly really big creatures later. That discharge isn't really going to kill anyway. Like, I expect a bunch of real big Eldrazi we need to save the Fel for. Okay. So now we can drop... Oh no, we can't drop Titan's Vanguard because I don't have a natural green source. Would have had to crack Landscape towards that. Yeah, which means I don't play anything this turn. Yeah, it's a little rough. Well, we're definitely not playing our removal spell as a land. Gonna pass. I could quest their own Void Pouncer onto our board, I guess. This is any graveyard? Yeah, that's probably not worth it, though. Hey, it's their own Cursed Mirror. It really is the mirror match. In more ways than one. Guess we set up double black here as well. Because I have a double black spell in hand. If I didn't, I'd probably just hold on to the Landscape again, because we do have some colorless cards. But we have a double black spell right now. I don't think it matters how I pay for this. I guess we hold up 1 black for quest, but that's sorcery speed, so doesn't matter. Writhing Chrysalis, excellent card, one of the best commons in the format. It comes with 2 Eldrazi spawn, and every time they sack any Eldrazi, it gets a +1/+1 counter on it. Luckily here, the fact that Vanguard gets a counter when it attacks means it's going to be like way too big. And mainly the fact that it has trample means we can just send right through these spawn tokens. The one thing I am pretty concerned about here is that our opponent has this Idol of the False Gods. So 8 Eldrazi die throughout this game, this thing's gonna annihilate us. So trying to make sure that doesn't happen. Evolution Witness is not even particularly good right now, but I don't think I'm running out a removal spell this turn. So let's cash in these creatures. Exile the Evolution Witness, that's pretty good. Stop its graveyard recursion value. Then It That Heralds the End. That gives all their colorless creatures +1/+1. Also makes their colorless spells with mana value 7 or greater cost 1 less to cast. So it helps get to the real big Eldrazi. Still think I'm killing the Chrysalis, if anything, with our propane. We can kill It That Heralds the End with the Simulacrum. It might be a little too late at that point, though, because they might have gotten the cost reduction they needed to play a big Eldrazi. Jam for 7. They are down to 7. I cannot double spell here. I also can't double removal spell here. I don't have triple black, so I also can't like fell their Chrysalis and then put it on my board with this quest, because I do need a 3rd black mana to do that. But I could Simulacrum the It That Heralds and put that on my board. I don't really feel that's super worth it. I think we're just gonna kill the Chrysalis, but we just hold off and do it during their turn in case they do get to cast a big like 7 mana Eldrazi here. They've got 5 out of 6 mana, because they only need 6 for a 7 mana Eldrazi. We'll see. Oh, actually, they do have the 7. They've got the Cursed Mirror as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6 that they need to cast a 7 mana Eldrazi. Now they could cast an 8 mana Eldrazi. Wumpus Aberration. Alright, they drop a 6/6. Ooh, they didn't have the colorless to pay for that? Let's go. So I get to play Gargantua for free? That is premium. Okay. Do I draw the cards off this? I can draw the cards off this. I can't draw the cards and kill something. I'm 1 mana off from that. I think I just want to try to lower their toughness enough to like kill them next turn. So I'm going to kill It That Heralds the End. It's adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 toughness to their board. That's the most toughness I can stop with 1 removal spell. And then we can attack in, and if they chump the Vanguard, then I can fell the propane to get in all of the trample damage and maybe just kill them on the spot. Could also reanimate this. That adds 1 more power to the Vanguard. Makes it even harder for them to not die. But then I don't have access to this to remove at instant speed, so that feels worse. Yeah, I probably do pre-combat this, since I'm kind of locked in on the fell here. I can pre-combat this, still have double black and 2 up. And this way, even if I don't lethal them, if they do like block the Vanguard with pretty much everybody, then I'm still getting a counter on my repurposer, even if I have to sack the spawn to cast the propane. Alright. Smart play from our opponent. They're not quite dead. They play around the instant speed removal. And live another turn. But we do wipe their board. Unless there's something real good for 1 red mana. Wait, how did they have green? Did I miss an untapped green source somehow? Maybe I did. Well, their idol's gonna be active now. That's really bad. That's really bad. They can't really attack with it currently, though, unless their last card in hand is relevant. Right, they have to sack this, that gets active. They could attack and annihilate 2 of our lands, but then, like, I've got lethal crackbacks. Okay, Gatekeeper. Alright. Ooh. Oh, I don't have a colorless source. Yikes. I guess I could quest for a colorless source, and then exile up to 1 non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 4 or less. I could try to exile the idol, but they respond by sacking the spawns that it has 8 counters on it. Which means it becomes the creature that's a blocker, and then it doesn't get exiled because it's no longer a non-creature permanence. 6 life. Anything I can reanimate to just, like, kill them here? No. I mean, Chrysalis would be pretty good. I can Chrysalis and cast the Thief. I guess we exile the Cursed Mirror at that point. We still have them in a position where they can't really attack us. We could go for Titan's Vanguard. Just buff the Repurposer. Well, I guess it wouldn't. It's on cast, not enter the battlefield. But in the future, we would. I kind of want to go Chrysalis here, so that I can run out both these cards. Try to get a wide board state towards attacking around the gigantic blocker. Oh, that's also when you cast it? Well, shoot. Too many cast triggers. You live and you learn. We are learning the format, as you do on day 1. It's not an enter the battlefield effect. That is a huge bummer. Then we gotta play slightly slow here. That was a good draw. Exile removal. So they have 1 blocker up. They block the Gargantua, take 4, go to 2 life. Worth it to sack Gargantua to put them to 2? That puts them dead to 1 creature getting through. I think that is worth it. They have to hit removal to clear out one of these. Removal or a blocker, and they didn't hit removal or a blocker. Alright. Little sloppy stuff in the endgame. Trying to differentiate between cast abilities and enter the battlefield abilities. It looks like most Eldrazi effects in this format are cast triggers. Wumpus Aberration, when you cast this spell. Titan's Vanguard, when you cast this spell. Writhing Chrysalis, when you cast the spell. Repurposer, when you cast the spell. That's a really important distinction to keep in mind. Most formats, it's when this enters the battlefield, but it looks like basically every Eldrazi in this set says when you cast this spell. So, really important to keep in mind with the graveyard recursion effects like Quest for the Necropolis and Victimize and stuff. So, nice little learning moment there, but still find the victory through it. And we start things off 1-0, heading into game 2. Alright, here we are for game 2. We can go green-black mana to start here, so we can keep this as colorless for the Wumpus Aberration, so that I can go turn 3 Repurposer, turn 4 Aberration, but still cast the Aberration off of lands alone and save the spawn for the Breaker of Creation later. This looks like a very reasonable start. That Simulacrum makes it a little sadder, because I kind of want to just get red towards that, but I need green real badly. Triple green spells here. Probably just going to grab that. But I guess since it's Wooded Foothills, where it puts it into play untapped, I don't have to crack it immediately. I just crack it the turn that I'm going to actually use the mana. Fell the Propane. We do really want to hit 4 mana here, and we're not going to have double black currently. Do I play this as a tap land? We're trying to make it all the way to 8 mana. I probably do play this as a tap land for the turn. Towards getting to the 8-drop spell. Oh, well, we could very much just die to that. This is a really extremely powerful rare. Every turn it gives something +2/+0 and haste right now. So it's immediately a 3 mana 5/3 trample haste at worst, which is a ridiculously good rate. And yeah, we would have had to have a really cheap red removal to be fine here. Because now we're already getting threatened for probably like 10 damage next turn if I don't have a blocker up. Right, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 damage. If they just play a 3-power creature, that's 11 damage getting attacking here. Luckily, we do have a blocker at this point at least, so we probably don't die this turn, but we still die very, very soon. This is the kind of card I was really scared of when I was talking about our lack of cheap creature spells. These are the kind of cards we just need, that cheap red burn. The Galvanic Discharge would have been perfect there. Could have killed it before it did any damage to us. Well, let's hope for no trick here. Well, there's the tiniest bit of breathing room. We're down to 6, so it's not a lot of breathing room. But if we can get to 8 mana, this is going to stabilize us. This gains us a ton of life. Gaining for each colorless permanent does gain for every land on our board. Also, Ulamog insta-wins. We make it to 10 mana. So, I could Wumpus Aberration and Horrific Assault the Void Pouncer, gain some life, and clear it out of here, but also just playing the Wumpus Aberration means that I have a 6/6 blocker, so I think I just play this. And if they removal spell it, I still have 2 chump blockers, worst case scenario. Ideally, though, we get to leave them around towards casting Breaker or Ulamog earlier. But we do have a backup plan. If the Aberration dies, it's not like we can't block here. Gravedig the Linebreaker. Alright, that's super bad. One, two, three, four, five, 6. We're on 7 out of 8 mana. We're not on Breaker of Creation mana yet. We're 1 away. Do I have to Horrific Assault this Void Pouncer just to lower the amount of buffs the Linebreaker's giving? It's giving +2/+0 haste right now. If I kill Void Pouncer, it's +1/+0. And I'll still have the Simulacrum to kill it later if I crack these for red, which I might have to do. My only card that needs colorless right now is Breaker of Creation, which needs double colorless, which I can get off of double spawn. So I could go Horrific Assault the Void Pouncer to gain a little bit of life, have a tiny bit of breathing room, and then we crack both of these towards red. So next turn I play and crack the Simulacrum to kill the Linebreaker. If I don't cast the Breaker. So this is going to be some kind of pump here. I'm at 9. Any kind of combat trick pump would still kill the Aberration later anyway. I'm just gaining 1 less off Breaker. And this way it's killing Aberration instead of Breaker. I think this is fine. To trade this into like a Death Touch trick. Oh, even better. It's like, I guess it's not hard removal. But it is removal. I guess this is protection from that, because it's protection from each color. Well, hexproof from each color. Okay, we have 2 options. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can hardcast Breaker next turn, or I could crack double red and Simulacrum the Linebreaker, and just stay stable and try to get towards Ulamog. I think I want to flip the board to stable and try to get to Ulamog. That might be greedy. Because if they do something that kills these Eldrazi spawn, now I'm locked out of Breaker of Creation, which is certainly not ideal, but I feel like it's slightly unlikely they do decide to just kill a couple Eldrazi spawn tokens. But who knows? Maybe there's a really good like -1/-1 or 1 damage to everybody kind of spell. But by playing this way, we're 1 land draw away from Ulamog. Every land in our deck is an untapped land, so any land in there works. Crack a Twisted Landscape. And here we go. Ulamog is a cast trigger, so we get excellent work done no matter what here. Wait, what? I'm so bad at math. I'm actually 1 mana off from Ulamog here. Never mind. I can quest for Necropolis, my Wumpus Aberration, for 6/6, I guess. Or I could have grabbed their Linebreaker pre-combat. That would have been better. Probably should have just grabbed their Linebreaker, but since I didn't grab anything yet, I can just have this around to reanimate an Ulamog if they kill it next turn. Alright, missed opportunity. We should have just grabbed a Linebreaker and just, like, trampled in for 1,000,000. Now we can Ulamog, though. It is possible that they could kill us here, though. There's like an active treason effect. They could steal Ulamog by sacking like all their permanents, and then they attack us with it and we die. Otherwise, they need to have a removal spell that kills Ulamog and a way to buff the germ at the same time. Proud Pack Rhino does not do that. Put a shield counter on the germ so it can get 1 free block in. Got Annihilator 7, though. Oh, get a free attack in and then try to finish it off with some kind of spell here. Death Touch spell. Be sad. Ulamog's a cast trigger, so it's actually not the best card to reanimate here. But actually... no, it enters the battlefield. So when you cast it, you exile the cards, but it enters the battlefield with counters equal to the greatest mana value among cards in exile. So it'll still get the enters the battlefield trigger. All right, yeah, so we still win off of just reanimate Ulamog there. A little riskier in the endgame than it needed to be, particularly because I didn't realize that Ulamog was the right mana, so I skipped through combat when I could have just reanimated a good creature for the turn instead of doing nothing. We definitely should have gotten their Linebreaker against them that last turn. But, I just miscounted the mana there. Another good learning moment, though, that the second part of Ulamog's ability is not actually a cast trigger. It just enters the battlefield with counters equal to the greatest mana value among cards in exile. So if you cast it 1 time, then you can reanimate it every time and still it's going to get all those counters. So reanimating Ulamog does actually work if you cast it the first time. So that's pretty sweet. We are now 2-0 heading into game 3. Here we are for game 3 now. This is a very awkward opening hand. It only has 2 of our colors, and in order to get the second color, we have to not hold on to this removal spell. We also have a 10-drop, which you don't want to have in your opening hand. You want to draw that later. I think we got a mulligan this one. This is much better mana-wise. We still have like an 8-drop here, so we probably mulligan that away. But this looks fine. Alright, there's a natural forest, so we might be able to keep this for colorless if we need it. Start poking with our little simulacrum buddy. White of the Reliquary. 2/2 Vigilance, gets bigger for all the creatures in grave, and can sack creatures to rampant growth, just fully put lands into play. That is very good. I want to kill that pretty quickly, because they do any Eldrazi spawn production, and they are just super ramping here. Unfortunately, I cannot kill that till turn 4. So this could be bad. If they just play like the 3-mana 3/3 that comes with an Eldrazi spawn here, they are just off to the races. Fully get a 4th land onto the board. Whatever color they need as well. Not even a basic land, literally any land. Just another excellent card that shows off the need for cheap removal. Speaking of cheap removal, they're going to use their cheap removal to delete ours. I wouldn't call 4-mana removal cheap removal, but still. They have deleted our removal spell. We now do not have a way in our hand to deal with this White of the Reliquary. It's a very funny pun, too. It's based off of Knight of the Reliquary from Conflux. That could sacrifice a plains or a forest to put any land into play tapped, and it got bigger for each land in your grave instead of each. Instead of each creature. I could, like, Gatekeeper out here, but just a ping for 2. I feel like I would rather get, use that later to try to get, like, a wide board state to actually connect for combat damage to trigger Disa or something later in the game. Not sure if it matters what land we play there. I mean, I guess I probably want the second black for Gengar next turn. But I can still just play that next turn. Arcbound Condor. Okay, luckily, triggers whenever another artifact enters the battlefield. And Modular only lets them move their +1/+1 counters to another artifact creature. So it doesn't actually work with the white. They could still attack in with the white, and if I block, then I'm trading Repurposer into Condor, but I would take that trade. So I will make the block if they do that. They do not, though. So if I Disa right now, then I attack with Repurposer and I basically make them sack Condor here, otherwise I get a Tarmogoyf. Could just play Gengar instead and have a gigantic flyer, and then it's more likely I get a Disa attack in next turn. Yeah. I guess I probably should have cracked this on red last turn. That would set up for Gatekeeper plus Disa in the same turn off of double red. I was just still thinking in the back of my head trying to save double Carless in case we top deck one of our 2 breakers. But we have like a locked-in guaranteed play with the cards that we currently have that needs double red. The breaker, it's like you don't know if you're going to draw it or not. Especially because one's on the bottom, right? Yeah, so there's only 1 in there. Yeah, I should have cracked this for red since I played it last turn. If I saw that line a little sooner, probably would have done that. Although technically if we cracked it for red, that would shuffle the other breaker back in, so then there would still be 2 breakers we could draw into. I have no idea what this is. Remove 2 oil counters from it. Exile another non-land permanent. Its controller draws 2. Okay, that's fine. I'll draw my 2. I'll be slightly sad, but I'll draw my 2. I think I'd rather have an Eldrazi spawn than a blood token in this deck, especially when I'm about to draw 2. Blood tokens allow you to discard a card to draw a card, just one time. Well, we're down to 10. Okay, Horrific Assault, you say? I've only got 1 green source, though, so I can't play anything big enough to matter and do that in the same turn. Go ahead and just drop a Wumpus Aberration, see if I can get them to throw removal that way. But I would want to play the Aberration with the Landscape, which would mean not cracking it for red for Gatekeeper Disa next turn. Like, I could cast this Aberration off of sacking the Spawn token and then Landscape towards red, but then I have no colorless sources on board, and there's actually a couple cards in the deck that need colorless mana at that point. Because I'd be shuffling the breakers back in, so there's 2 of those. There's also my green rare that needs colorless mana. Yeah, I don't want to spend both my colorless here. But, you know, I guess we gotta dump the cards that we've got. We need to start flipping this game around quickly. We're down to 10 now, potentially taking 4 a turn. So I'm going to do everything in my power to start flipping the tempo back in our direction by making a line that leads to a really big play next turn. So how does this get the oil counters back? Whenever they attack, 2 or more creatures attack, so they have to attack with a bunch. Ooh, we get to draw another 2 cards. Sure. I mean, I'm a little sad to lose the 6/6, but means we're not losing the Disa. Oh, and they don't have the... Oh, they do have the mana. It's any color lets them do that. Do the exile. Alright. I mean, it's not ideal that they're clearing out all our blockers, but we are getting cards back out of this. I guess we can see if we top deck a red source, and then I don't have to crack the landscape in case I do draw a colorless card. Let's go. Draw. We did not draw a red source, but we drew a colorless source, which helps in the future. Helps me be less concerned about losing my colorless source. I guess I could go Disa Horrific Assault instead of Molten Gatekeeper Disa. Because either way, I'm going to attack with one creature against their one blocker, or I'm going to attack with two creatures against their two blockers. Yeah, I think Horrific Assault is better. So Disa... Horrific Assault the white. We attack with the Repurposer. They let us get a Tarmogoyf, or they trade off their Nightshade Dryad. And we gain 3 because we control an Eldrazi, which is pretty huge. Alright, so... this looks pretty good for us no matter what happens. We do get the Tarmogoyf. Let's go. That can start flipping things around here. Tarmogoyf, power and toughness equal the number of card types among cards in all graveyards. I guess the toughness is one larger than that. But on Arena, you don't really have to think about it. You can just be like, it's probably big in the late game. If there's a bunch of exile shenanigans running around and stuff like that, then you do kind of need to think about it. Alright, there's Breaker of Creation, which only has 4 toughness, so we can definitely block and kill it with a Tarmogoyf token. We can also just trade Disa into that on attacks. We cannot target it with anything because it's hexproof from each color. But all I need is one blocker up and I just sack 2 lands and we're good. So go for damage here. I don't think I Gatekeeper unless I'm playing a creature that turn, because then I get like 1 extra damage off that, but I will trade Disa into this thing, and then we're just very far ahead in this top deck war. Oh, when anybody attacks with 2 or more creatures, that gets a counter? Alright, that's good to know in the future. Slightly concerning. So if they attack with the Dryad and the Breaker, then they will get another counter on that. Maybe I have to just fell the Dryad so they can't use any removal here. Off of this Argent Dias. When they've got 2 of them. When they have 2 of them, I think I do that. They're going for it, all right. Show me what you've got. Because hexproof is not full-on protection. We do get to block with colored creatures. Flare of Cultivation, so mana ramp. All right. Looks like that is game, and we get to start the event off 3-0 here after they play around with some basics. I guess if I attack with 2 or more creatures, they get to use these because these are instant speed. So I have to attack them with 1 creature and give them 1 more top deck, actually. Yeah. I can't actually trigger those. It's not technically over yet. Could unearth this, attack with everybody. They exile those 2, take 5, but they're still alive. Alright, Watchdog. It's probably not enough. Well, they've got the mana up for both of these, so I again have to attack with 1 creature they trump. Okay, now it's definitely not enough. We found the removal. Just attack with 1 5-power creature. And that will end it. Now we are officially 3-0, heading into game 4. Alright, here we are for game 4. This is a little high on the mana curve here. A 1-drop and then a 5 and a 9-drop, but our 9-drop has a merge. We can try to cast it for cheaper by reducing the mana cost for whatever we sacked. It's like if I sack the Spawn Gang commander, that's reducing the cost by 5. Get to cast it for only, what, 3 mana? Could be some good stuff. Turn 6, we get to play Harrogast. Nightshade Dryad. I am just going to shoot the Mana Dork. Prevent them from ramping into their good stuff early. We got the double red for the Spawn Gang Commander turn 5. There's an Evolution Witness. Great card that can go ahead and pick up their Mana Dork later. Do I even just not allow them to do that? Because it's just 2 for 1 value here? I think I do. Technically, I could start throwing Eldrazi Spawn around, but I need another colorless source to not have to sacrifice Eldrazi Spawn to shoot things with Eldrazi Spawn. So, not super into it. Alright, there's a 3-4, and that is it. Here is a colorless source for the Spawn Gang Commander's ability. And here's the Spawn Gang Commander. Ka-ching. Cash, money, money. All the manas. Can definitely Harrogast. Well, unless they kill the commander itself. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We can still Harrogast if they kill the commander itself. And I think we're probably good to sack commander, because they're playing all like 4 toughness and greater stuff right now, where shooting things with our spawn isn't going to do anything. Alright, they're going to kill it anyway. That is a fight spell. No, it's not. That's just a deal damage. Okay, never mind. If it was a fight spell, I could like sack all my spawn to deal 2 to that and finish it off, but even then it wouldn't be worth it. Take 3, down to 16. Okay, Horrific Assaults. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. I don't have the mana to play this and Horrific Assault in the same turn. Because I can cast it for 9 by sacking everything, or I can emerge it for 8 and sack the remaining Eldrazi spawn and functionally have spent 9 anyway. And if I play it, I do have to get rid of my Horrific Assault and my Evolution Witness to draw the new cards, which honestly is probably worth it. Neither of these are very good unless I've got the double green setup, which I don't yet. We tapped out for the Siege Gang. We didn't crack this for green. I think I'm going to run this out. Take a bit of a hit here to try to get some good value off that next turn. Because then I'll have the mana to like use this to pick something up, but then also merge sacking it. Maybe even do all that and Horrific Assault after we cast the Harrogast. Or I guess casting Horrific Assault after the Harrogast doesn't work, because we exile it from the hand to draw the 3 unless I choose not to. But I think we need to do some digging for more threats, so we're probably going to choose to draw 3. Here comes a big hit. 7, go to 9 life. Sure. Still chump block with the Eldrazi spawn later. Potentially for even more damage if they play bigger Eldrazi, or this Chrysalis ends up getting bigger. Okay, discharge the Witness. That's annoying. Now I don't even know if double green's necessary because our only green card is Horrific Assault. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I just kind of need to top deck a land. Play this, don't exile my hand, kill something and gain 3, killing the Oozewag. Then I have a 6/6 to block that. We hold off all their attacks unless their last card in hand is removal. So we're on team top deck a land and don't draw 3. That's the most guaranteed line we have. Is there a reason to crack this right now? In case I top deck a double green card, I don't have any double green cards, but if I top deck like a Disa, I could play Disa and Horrific Assault, or a Titan's Vanguard, I could play that and Horrific Assault, or a Wumbus Aberration. It's going to make it slightly less likely to top deck a land here, but it's going to make like 4 of our draws slightly better, to where we can cast like a juicy green creature and kill the Oozewag and gain 2 in the same turn if we don't hit a land, if we hit a big green creature instead. Alright, so decently sized creatures are good draws, lands are good draws. There's a lot of good draws in here. That's not one of them. It's a 3/4. Yep, that's not on the list of good draws. So the emerge cost is 1 cheaper than the hard cast cost. So if I go green, black, 1, cast this, I have 2 spawn, 2... Let's see. I think I can, if I cast this and then emerge this, I can have 1 green up for Horrific Assault to Harrogast after, but I lose all the Eldrazi spawn. I don't kill anything with this Enter the Battlefield effect, and I don't get to draw cards off of Harrogast if I am saving... if I'm saving this card in hand instead of exiling here. Right, because I can emerge, that's 3 mana less, so it emerges for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold up 1 green for Assault. Yeah. I guess it's not an abysmal draw. If I exile my hand, draw 3, I don't have any other 1 mana cards. I just draw 3 and then die to the board. I block the biggest thing and take like 7. I guess I go to 3, but We just do this, hope for no removal, and that holds off the blocks, and we're in a losing battle of a top deck war. We gotta get luckier than our opponent at this point, but I think it's the best bet we have. We have to get really, really lucky to survive just drawing the 3 and not using removal there, because we're at like 3 life against a red deck. Cycle that or save it for a colorless source and a land? We've got 7, 8. We have 2 8 drops in the deck and a 10 drop. 24 cards. I think I just play this. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Getting towards the mana for a top deck Ulamog, but I'm sure our opponent is as well. 6. As long as you return non-land permanents in your grave have retrace, that's so bad. So if they just top deck lands, they can still keep casting anything out of their graveyard. Yeah, that's horrific. 6 definitely wins the top deck war. Now we drew a landscape we can't cycle, and I wish I cycled the first one. All right. I guess we could have seen one more card if we cycled here, but things are about to end really quick with this 6. This isn't even locked down to 1 per turn. I mean, I guess they're realistically only going to draw 1 land per turn, but still. Why does this cost 1 red? I'm not emerging this. What is... Oh, it's just showing me the emerge cost for some reason? Weird. I'm like, definitely not gonna sack my Haragast. But Arena wants me to. Aw, now they're just gonna hit my Ulamog instead. Nope. They hit Disa and Titan's Vanguard and Fanged Flames. They hit 3 very solid draws. They won the top deck war with their own deck and with our deck. It was a long shot, but we certainly got demolished here. With the variance. This is only till end of turn though, right? Nope, end of your next turn. Never mind. Well, there's what I was saving the colorless for. That's a tiny bit of something. Can't attack in, because if I attack in with the Haragast, they can sacrifice the spawn and double block to kill Haragast with Chrysalis and 6. I guess they get to cast Disa and exile the Gatekeeper as their best play out of our spells here. Which is pretty bad, because then they can just like send in the whole board. Oh, it's got the Void. This thing's got the Void, so it gets around hexproof from colors because it's technically colorless. That's annoying.
I never really liked Devoid as a mechanic, but I really didn't like it on spells. On creatures, like, I guess I get it. You want to make the Eldrazi colorless even though you spent colored mana on them, but Devoid spells are really weird. Kind of feels like they're playing with their food at this point, but I guess they still don't have an attack where they don't lose a creature. So, I mean, if they don't attack this turn, yeah, okay. I was gonna say then they're like really playing with their food. There they go. I was gonna say, if they sit here doing nothing too long, like, Ulamog is the kind of draw that we have in this deck that could just completely flip things out of nowhere. So if they play around too much, it could be really bad for them. I guess I just see if I can keep the Gatekeeper around. If it's lethal, it's lethal. No, the instant in hand. All right. Game 5 it is. All right, here we are for game 5. We're 3-1 right now. We've got great cheap removal, we've got a solid cheap ramper, and we have the big card we want to ramp into. Ideally, of course, we top deck the Ulamog later after ramping a little bit, but I'm not going to complain about cheap removal and ramp in the opening hand. Could even just crack this landscape for red immediately, which might be worth it despite us having some colorless spells in the deck. Probably have slightly more red spells than colorless spells. Yeah, now I have a very good red spell in hand, so we're probably cracking landscape on red here, but we've got Wither and Bloom up if we need to kill something instead. Rexian Ironworks. Okay, so if I kill that, I stop them from getting this initial energy, which slows them down from making another 3/3 off this. I think I will do that. The issue here is now we're not going to play Disa till turn 5. Because we have to play Repurposer now, we get the spawn off of Repurposer, then next turn we still have to crack Landscape to get the red source. But I like trying to just keep that thing stuck right now. Stranded, I guess is the term. I guess on the plus side, this means we're not sacking the Eldrazi spawn, so we have more colorless creatures on board for when we play Titan's Vanguard. Or it means that we have more Eldrazi spawn around to ramp into Ulamog later. Yeah, I guess we're playing Titan's Vanguard next turn. I mean, they might have a counterspell, that'd be rough, but Disa doesn't actually do anything when we don't have a creature on board that's dealing combat damage to our opponent. And we won't without the Titan's Vanguard. And I guess the nice thing about casting Titan's Vanguard into a counterspell is we still get the cast trigger. So we still make the Eldrazi spawn matter now. We make it so they can trigger a Disa that we cast later, whether or not the Vanguard resolves. Poke. Just a little poke. Unfathomable truths. Our opponent draws 3 and gets an Eldrazi spawn towards their own gigantic Eldrazi spells. Does feel like a limited format that is going to be very much around Eldrazi, because anyone who opens up a giant Eldrazi, because they're all colorless, is just going to play them in sealed. Doesn't really matter what colors you are. Like, we're the Eldrazi Jund deck. They are Grixis, but still have some of that ramp in there, and still have some of those big colorless Eldrazi, like you can see with the Ravager. Amphibian Downpour, just make it a 1/1 with no abilities? Sure. It still attacks, it still threatens to do a single combat damage to our opponent, and if it does, then we get a Tarmogoyf off of Disa. So this is fine. Psychic Frog, how does this work? They can discard a card to put a +1/+1 counter on it. They can exile 3 cards from their grave to give it flying till end of turn. Yikes. The fact that discarding gives a full-on +1/+1 counter is sketchy. I don't have double red, so I can't Disa and discharge here, but I can't discharge the Psychic Frog because they could discard 2 cards to save it. I guess if they block anything with Psychic Frog here, and then I discharge, they'd have to discard their whole hand to save the Psychic Frog. But it also might be more worth it to just play Disa and get a Tarmogoyf and let them have Psychic Frog for a bit. You know? It's probably more worth it to just play Disa while they're pretty much tapped out. Because we definitely connect. I mean, they can block an Eldrazi spawn, discard a card to kill one of our Eldrazi spawn here. Just solid for them. But we're definitely hitting them with 1 creature. Alright, no, they're just going to go for no discard. Kill the 1/1 instead, which is fair. Still had to attack with all 3 to actually get Disa to make the Tarmogoyf, which was certainly worth it. Because if I just attacked with the 2 Eldrazi spawn, they could bounce off a spawn and chump the other, and we would get no Tarmogoyf for the turn. Also, we have Graveyard Recursions, so this makes it possible we can get the Titan's Vanguard back later. That's a thing, too. Alright, they're going to start drawing cards off the Psychic Frog by exiling the grave. Melted Charge Bug. That's 2 energy, so that gives them a 3/3 off of Phyrexian Ironworks. But they can also use it towards a Galvanic Discharge on Disa. And she is gone. Refurbish Familiar, that's pretty annoying. We discard a card. That's super annoying. They're low enough on cards here. I think I have to discard Wumpus Aberration so we can Galvanic Discharge Psychic Frog, because they don't have enough cards to save it now, so we can stop their card draw engine. Horrific Assault. We do have Eldrazi on board, so we gain life by casting this. Save discharge for something else. Sure. I'm going to save Wither and Bloom. We have a couple synergistic places to put that +1/+1 counter. That would be way more impactful than just like 1 or 2 more damage. I think I let the familiar chill for now. Yes. Yes, I do let the familiar chill for now. Okay, now they'd have to sack an Eldrazi spawn to do anything with Spawn Gang Commander. Oh, but the second Refurbished Familiar means I'd have to discard Ulamog if I Galvanic Discharge the Spawn Gang Commander. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. I'm still 2 draws away from actually casting the Ulamog. These Refurbished Familiars are just nasty here. I have to let them just keep the spawn gang commander, but then the spawn gang commander lets them trade their 0-1 Eldrazi spawns into our 1-2 Eldrazi spawns and keep us off of the Ulamog anyway. This is like a rock and a hard place. Neither of these ends well for us. I'm just gonna pray here. I'm gonna discard the discharge. This is land 9 out of 10 if they don't spawn gang commander and Eldrazi spawn. Or mana 9 out of 10. Pick up the Eldrazi Ravager, sure. Completely forgot about this card. Annihilator 1. Annihilator 1 is still a very big deal. That would stop me from casting Ulamog if I don't top deck a land and it attacks once before that point. Charge Bug in to give menace to the commander. Oh, it doesn't actually trigger in the order they wanted it to, so they're not going to do that. Or no, they only need 1 energy to give menace to the commander. But I guess if I double block with 2 spawns, they sacrifice one of their spawns to kill one of mine and they kill both of them. So that's, yeah, that makes sense. Means it is just a good locked-in attack either way. Alright, top deck. Give me a land. That's not good. Probably the death sentence. Can Annihilator 1 them, I guess. Or make them discard 1 card. It enters the battlefield as a copy, so it doesn't get cast triggers, so we don't get any Eldrazi spawn out of it or anything. I think I just Annihilate 1 them. But now they just attack with Annihilator 1, and then I am guaranteed to just not cast Ulamog at this point. They save the Eldrazi spawns to bring back their Eldrazi Ravager later, maybe. Trying to have a 6-6, or sorry, a 6-7 against their 6-6 here. Might hold it off. I guess we can just sack the Cursed Mirror to the Annihilator. Or one of the Eldrazi spawn. Either way, I'll still have 10 mana since I did draw another land source. Well, I'll still have 10 mana if I top deck another land, I guess. They are not going to annihilate me, they're just going to get flying damage in. Shadow Spinner, sure. Okay, Ulamog's a thing, and we play the land so I don't have to sack any extra spawns right now. Just the 1. They exile 9 cards. How many counters does this get? 5. Might not be enough, though. We're taking 4 a turn. I'm realistically dying in 2 turns here, because they can hit for 4, sack a spawn. Like, they can sack a spawn right now. If they top deck another colorless source, I think we're dead. Actually, no, we are dead here, because they can sack the Eldrazi Ravager as well. This is any Eldrazi, not just the Eldrazi spawn. If it only sacked Eldrazi spawn, we'd be fine, but because it can sack any Eldrazi, they have the double colorless to throw the Ravager at us and then throw the Siege Gang Commander at us and hit us for 8 here. That's rough. Yeah, this card is nasty in the right position. But I really think the MVPs here were the refurbished familiars. Like, flying was huge, but them just being 2-for-1s the second they hit the board. A flyer that also ripped out a card from our hand each time just held us off from actually stopping damage before we could cast this Ulamog. If we had to discard 0 cards this game, we could probably win, but the familiars really got us in the end, and we are now 3-2 heading into game 6. All right, here we are for game number 6. Let's just go with another super slow hand and see if we can survive or not. I've got a creature and a piece of mana ramp for early, so that is what we're relying on. Do I Curse Mirror right now so that I can just, like, have more mana towards a Witness plus Adapt in the same turn later? I guess we probably don't really want to play Witness too badly when there's no permanent in our grave anyway. Like, I guess we could have just cracked Landscape for some Witness value. Interesting conundrum. But then I don't have a colorless source for my colorless cards. We've got 3 of, I think. Ooh, Ophiomancers in this format. Card's pretty annoying. They get a 1/1 Death Touch Snake in every single upkeep, so if they have any sack effects, that card's going to go absolutely wild. And now we need to kill that with a Horrific Assault pretty badly, so I think I need to just crack towards double green so I can cast Witness and kill it in the same turn. Without having to, like, roll out the Witness and have it just get killed by a removal spell, and then we can't do anything about the Ophiomancer. I guess if they have instant speed removal, this is going to be rough, because then Horrific Assault is just never going to resolve. They just wither in response to -3/-3 the Witness, kill our Witness and our removal spell at the same time. That would be bad. They do have a black and 1 up here. Literally the second I crack the Landscape, I draw a colorless spell. That is just the way of life. That is just the way of life. Well, our only play at this point is to pray that they don't have instant speed interaction, because these Eldrazi spawn would still hold for them here. But I guess I could Witness back the Twisted Landscape to play Thief of Existence later and just not kill anything right now. I still take 3. 3 is not the end of the world, actually. You know what? Fine. This way, if they have Wither and Bloom, they still stop us from getting, like, the Twisted thing. Oh. Well, that works. But yeah, then they don't get our removal spell out of our hand, is the big part there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th mana next turn. We need a creature on board to emerge these things. That is where we're at right now. Find a colorless source for Thief of Existence, or find other creatures to play to start the emerge chain into Ulamog. In fact, if we get a creature on board that we can emerge Haragast with, we probably get to cast Ulamog in the exact same turn, because we can emerge Ulamog off of just sacking Haragast and spending 1. So
I think that's the plan. Just find any creature to get Harrogast on the board. Colorless Source works for the Thief of Existence. Unfortunately, Discharge does not work to kill this 3/4. I could kill the 1/1 with it or just hold off. Try to kill something slightly bigger. I guess if the 1/1 is still around by the time that we play Ulamog, then the 1/1 can just kill Ulamog by chumping. So, it's not the worst kill ever. I mean, it's an emerge creature. Red, red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be exactly enough if this manages to stick around. Which maybe it will, because it doesn't actually threaten to kill anything on this board. Threatens to kill an Eldrazi spawn, it doesn't even block the sentry. I would have to draw another land to play Harrogast and Ulamog in the same turn at this point, though. Because I would have exactly enough to emerge Harrogast and have no mana left over. If I emerge it off of a 1 mana creature. Now, this thing has just gotten loaded up. The Scurrilous Sentry. There's Evolution Witness. Top deck land, let's go. Okay. I might just die, because this was slow enough I'm at 7 right now, but... hey, maybe not. We are about to cast an Ulamog. Actually, we almost definitely just die if I cast Ulamog, right? They're attacking for 6 with Menace. They can pick up any permanent from their grave with this thing. Tread Mask or something, but it goes back to hand, so it doesn't, like, kill me. Oh. I could instead cast Harrogast and just leave it around and Horrific Assault to gain some life, killing the sentry. But then if they have removal for Harrogast, then we're not casting Ulamog. I'm 2 lands away from casting Ulamog at that point, but I gain life, so it is considerably safer life total-wise. It is a conundrum for sure. I mean, how can you resist that? Look at that. So if I Horrific Assault, I'm at 10 and Sentry's gone. It's really unlikely we die next turn, but it's also really unlikely we cast Ulamog at that point, and they still have like 5 more cards. So they can still kill us over time. They've also got Witness to get any of these back. It's quite bad. This just feels so much safer. Unless it's instant speed removal, in which case we die either way. If I emerge Ulamog, they just kill Ulamog. Oh. That's also we die either way, because if I cast Ulamog here, they would just attack with a 7-power Sentry, because they draw a card, discard any non-land, and they hit us for 7. We can't block because it has Menace, and I would not have gained 3 life because I would not have cast Horrific Assault, so technically the slightly better play, because we didn't die until they also cast a burn spell. The other way we would have died off of the combat trick alone. Well, that was a bummer. Just slightly too slow. Pretty close to flipping things just because of how crazy Ulamog is, but it was a pretty slow hand, and they got that Sentry really rolling against us. Also, a lot of good damage in from the early Ophiomancer there, with the Snake token getting in for damage alongside. So, alright. 3 and 3 it is, a nice standard, a nice average run. For our first sealed events of the format, I do think this deck was just a little too slow, but really the sealed pool's a little too slow. I don't think there were any super good options we could put in at cheap mana costs, but it might have been worth it to just throw in really filler blockers in the early game to give us a little bit more time. That could have been fine. We had a few of those as options, but I think we're playing all of the best top end in the deck for sure, and that is how we won most of those games. Get beaten down a lot in the early game and then just really recover and flip the game around after a bunch of initial damage. So solid stuff overall. A little bit of a disappointing record, kind of at that 3-3 super average mediocrity, but I think that's fair enough. We had some definite issues in the deck that were not super well addressed with the build, so we did lose some games to those issues. So 3 and 3 it is. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it and you're interested in seeing some more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.